Have you ever wondered why some people seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to excel at everything they attempt? They launch a startup and within 18 months they're generating 7 figures. They begin learning a creative discipline and within weeks they're producing work that rivals seasoned professionals. They step into a highly competitive arena and quickly ascend to elite status, while others with years of experience stay frozen at the same level. And you know what the majority of people say when they witness this? Oh, they got lucky. They know the right people. They had money to begin with. They're just naturally gifted. You've encountered these justifications countless times. Perhaps you've even repeated them yourself. But what if I told you that luck, networking, capital, and innate ability are not the true separating factors? What if the hidden advantage these individuals possess is something completely different? Something that has zero connection to external circumstances and total connection to how they process the world around them. The reality is, true masters don't simply approach work differently than ordinary performers. They perceive reality differently. They've discovered what the Japanese refer to as mitsukeru, the capacity to observe, not merely with physical vision, but with intellect, physiology, and consciousness unified as one. This isn't some mystical belief system. This is a developable mental capability that divides the hobbyist who accumulates techniques from the expert who has moved beyond technique completely. And here's the most intriguing aspect. The legendary Japanese warriors developed a structured methodology to cultivate this capability. But there's one requirement. Mastering this framework demands that you accept something that will completely shatter your self-image. It will compel you to acknowledge that everything you believed you understood about learning, repetition, and expertise might be fundamentally flawed. Before I unveil this complete framework, I invite you to subscribe to Discipline and Destiny, hit the like button below, and share in the comments. What's one ability you're struggling to master despite persistent effort? Feel free to express yourself. I genuinely enjoy reading your thoughts and connecting with you. Now, let's explore this ancient wisdom. Allow me to share the story of a young individual named David. He existed in modern-day California during the digital revolution era. And from the age of 22, he possessed one consuming ambition: to become a master programmer and build revolutionary software. David wasn't born into a tech dynasty. He had no connections to Silicon Valley elite, no mentor at Google or Facebook to guide him, nothing except an overwhelming drive that consumed him like an unstoppable flame. While other recent graduates settled into corporate jobs and accepted mediocrity, David invested every available hour studying the craft of code. He watched programming tutorials from legendary developers and attempted to replicate their logic. He studied documentation about breakthrough applications. He analyzed the methodologies of visionary tech founders like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. By age 23, he could discuss software architecture principles from memory. He knew the syntax of every major programming language. He understood computer science theory better than most junior developers. His intellectual understanding was extensive. But when he sat down at his keyboard and attempted to build something real, something unexpected occurred. His fingers wouldn't execute. The code that appeared so elegant when written by masters felt awkward and broken when he attempted it. The logic felt heavy and unnatural in his mind. For 18 months, David remained imprisoned in this contradiction. The more he studied, the more he comprehended intellectually, but his actual capability barely progressed. He stagnated at a novice level while he observed others advance beyond him. Then one day, everything transformed. David was coding alone in a coffee shop when an experienced software architect sat down nearby. The architect glanced at David's screen and said, "You write code like someone reciting a recipe they've never tasted," the architect observed. "You know the ingredients, but you don't understand the flavor." David felt humiliation burn through him. "I have studied every framework I could access, sir. I know the patterns." "No," the architect said decisively. "You know about the patterns. That is not equivalent to knowing them." The veteran developer leaned closer. "My name is Robert. I've built systems for 3 different unicorn startups before going independent. And I recognize in you the same error I committed in my early years. You are attempting to learn programming with your intellect alone. But programming cannot be mastered this way." David was perplexed. How else can someone learn except through mental understanding? That, Robert said, is precisely why you're trapped. You assume the mind is singular. But the ancient Japanese masters understood that humans possess three distinct minds, not one. And true mastery requires integrating all three. Robert opened his laptop and pulled up a diagram. Before I teach you anything about code architecture, you must comprehend the three minds. This understanding has been transmitted through generations of Japanese craftsmen and warriors. But few in your generation grasp it anymore. The first mind, Robert began, is Shin, the analytical mind. This is the mind you've been utilizing. The mind of logic, reasoning, and deliberate thought. This mind acquires information, memorizes patterns, and comprehends concepts. This mind is crucial, but it is not where mastery exists. He sketched on a napkin. The second mind is Tai, the somatic mind. This is the intelligence that resides in your muscle memory, neural pathways, and automatic responses. This mind doesn't process in language or abstractions. It processes in action, sensation, and embodied memory. When you observe a master code without thinking, you are witnessing the somatic mind in operation. The third mind, Robert continued, his tone becoming more intense, is Shinshin, the intuitive mind. This is the deepest intelligence, the aspect of you that comprehends without understanding how it comprehends. The masters call this Mushin, no mind. At this dimension, there is no division between you and the code, between intention and execution, between self and solution. David attempted to process this. But sir, how do I develop these other minds? I only know how to engage the analytical mind. Precisely, Robert said. This is the fundamental problem with contemporary education. Your entire existence you have been conditioned that learning means processing with the analytical mind, reading, memorizing, grasping concepts. And this has made you capable in the analytical mind but deficient in the other two minds. Authentic mastery requires all three minds functioning in perfect synchronization. And there exists a methodology, a systematic progression that the ancient craftsmen developed to unify these three minds. We call it the three gates. The first gate, Robert explained, is called Shu, imitate and obey. At this gate, you are conditioning the somatic mind to embody what the analytical mind already comprehends. For the next 4 months, you will build only one type of application, the most fundamental CRUD app. You will construct it from scratch, with complete focus, 200 times. David's enthusiasm deflated. Only one basic app for 4 months. But sir, I want to learn advanced system design techniques. Robert's expression hardened. And that impatience is precisely why you will never achieve mastery if you continue with this mentality. The first gate is not about accumulating techniques. It is about teaching your somatic mind to communicate. Right now when you write code, your analytical mind attempts to control every keystroke. Type this function. Structure the logic this way. Implement the pattern like this. Your analytical mind is commanding, issuing instructions to your fingers like a commander shouting orders to disoriented troops. This is too sluggish, too awkward, too conscious. In actual software development, there is no time for the analytical mind to issue commands. The somatic mind must execute instantly without deliberation. But your somatic mind is currently disconnected and unresponsive. It doesn't know how to construct correctly because it has never been properly conditioned. So we must train it. And training the somatic mind requires a completely different methodology than training the analytical mind. Robert demonstrated on his laptop a simple sequence of components, functions, and state management. You will not analyze while building this. No evaluation, no attempting to optimize. Just repeat continuously. Allow your somatic mind to absorb the architecture through pure repetition. For the first month, David struggled intensely. His analytical mind kept interfering. Am I structuring this correctly? Should this component be positioned differently? Is this the optimal pattern? The constant mental noise made every line of code feel mechanical and forced. But Robert was unwavering. Stop analyzing. Just build. Feel the structure. Let your fingers learn. Gradually, something began to shift. Around the third month, during build number 147, something remarkable occurred. David's fingers executed the entire application structure perfectly, smoothly, effortlessly, and he hadn't been consciously thinking about it at all. His analytical mind had been silent, and his somatic mind had simply performed. "Did you experience that?" Robert asked, observing from across the table. "That moment when thought vanished and only execution remained? That is the first indication of the somatic mind awakening." What David was experiencing has a precise neurological explanation that modern science has only recently validated. When you acquire a technical skill, the knowledge initially resides in your prefrontal cortex, the conscious analytical region of your brain. This is inefficient, demands intense focus, and exhausts cognitive resources rapidly. But with appropriate repetition, specifically 300 to 1000 correct executions, something extraordinary occurs. The behavioral pattern begins migrating from the prefrontal cortex to the cerebellum and basal ganglia. These are significantly older, faster, more efficient neural structures that function beneath conscious awareness. Once a skill pattern is encoded in these deeper structures, music, it becomes what neuroscientists term procedural memory or automaticity. The skill no longer demands conscious deliberation. It executes automatically, fluidly, perfectly. This is what the ancient Japanese craftsmen understood intuitively and called the somatic mind. They didn't possess neuroimaging technology, but they recognized from centuries of observation that authentic skill exists below the analytical mind. But here's what most contemporary learners never grasp. This transfer from conscious to unconscious processing only manifests with a specific type of practice. Not just any repetition functions. The practice must be deliberate enough to maintain perfect form, focused enough to prevent cognitive drift, repetitive enough to encode the pattern deeply, free from constant analytical interference. This is why Robert prohibited David from analyzing during practice. Analysis maintains the skill in the analytical mind. To transfer it to the somatic mind, you must practice in a state that the Japanese call mushin no shin, mind of no mind. After 4 months at the first gate, David's fingers had learned one application architecture so profoundly that he could build it flawlessly while engaged in conversation, while distracted, even while exhausted. The pattern had transferred completely into his somatic mind. "Now," Robert said, "you are prepared for the second gate." The first gate taught your somatic mind to execute structure perfectly, Robert explained. But if you terminate there, you will be inflexible. You will be capable of building the same application beautifully in isolation. But you will be helpless in actual product development where nothing proceeds according to predetermined patterns. The second gate is called Ha, transformation mind. At this gate, you discover how to adapt, to respond, to flow with evolving requirements. For the next 12 months, Robert's instruction transformed completely. Instead of building the same application repeatedly, David now confronted endless variation. Robert would introduce different technical constraints, different performance requirements, different user scenarios, different integration challenges. Sometimes he would request features that seemed contradictory. Sometimes he would introduce bugs intentionally to see how David would respond. Initially, David was overwhelmed. His somatic mind understood the perfect structure, but real development was chaos. Nothing aligned with the clean patterns he had internalized. "Your somatic mind speaks one language currently," Robert said after a particularly challenging session. "It knows how to articulate one sentence flawlessly, but mastery demands your somatic mind to become fluent, to articulate 1,000 sentences, to generate new sentences it has never articulated before. This is the purpose of the second gate. You are not acquiring new techniques. You are teaching your somatic mind to improvise, to take the foundation from the first gate and adapt it infinitely." Robert introduced a concept that would revolutionize everything: Marari, the principle of technical distance and timing. Most developers think programming is about music, patterns, Robert explained. Use this framework, implement that algorithm. But masters understand programming is about Marari. If your Marari is perfect, even a simple solution becomes powerful. If your Marari is incorrect, even the most sophisticated architecture will collapse. Marari cannot be learned by the analytical mind. It is too dynamic, too contextual, too situational. Only the somatic mind can perceive and respond to Marari in real time. For months, David trained his somatic mind to feel technical distance and timing. Robert would present problems, and David would practice responding with a minimum necessary complexity. Not over-engineered, not underdeveloped, not premature, not delayed, just sufficient. Gradually, David began developing what the masters call Sen, technical intuition. The capacity to perceive the solution before the solution, to sense when a system is about to fail, not through conscious monitoring, but through the somatic mind's direct perception. One day during development, David refactored code he hadn't consciously identified as problematic. His fingers had responded before his analytical mind even registered the technical debt. "There," Robert said with rare approval. "Your somatic mind is becoming intelligent. It is learning to perceive and respond without waiting for instructions from your analytical mind." As David's somatic mind developed, he began noticing something unusual. He could sense things he couldn't rationalize. He'd be reviewing code and suddenly know a function was about to cause issues, even though nothing in the syntax appeared incorrect. He'd feel when a system architecture was fundamentally flawed. He'd sense the quality of another developer's understanding, whether they truly comprehended or were merely copying, before they executed. "Sir," David asked one music evening, "am I imagining these perceptions or is something genuine occurring?" Robert smiled. "Both. You are not imagining them. The perceptions are authentic, but they are not originating from where you assume they are originating. Your analytical mind processes information slowly and sequentially. Eyes observe, brain analyzes, decision formulated, action executed. This is too slow for mastery. But your somatic mind processes information differently. It absorbs thousands of subtle indicators simultaneously, micro-patterns, changes in system behavior, shifts in performance metrics, variations in code quality. It processes all of this below conscious awareness and generates what feels like intuition or sensing. The masters call this Shuhari, the capacity to perceive and merge with your system's energy and state. It appears mystical, but it is actually your nervous system operating at a dimension of perception that your analytical mind cannot access. Robert explained something profound about the second gate. You are training your somatic mind not merely to code skillfully but to perceive deeply. The somatic mind has its own intelligence, its own way of knowing. As it develops, you begin perceiving aspects of technical reality that were always present but invisible to your analytical mind. This is what neuroscientists call embodied cognition, the discovery that intelligence doesn't just reside in the brain but throughout the entire nervous system. Your body is quite literally capable of knowing things your conscious mind cannot access. Elite athletes call it being in the zone. Musicians call it flow state. Developers call it being wired in. But all of these describe the same phenomenon, the somatic mind assuming control while the analytical mind becomes quiet. After 18 months at the second gate, David had developed a fluid, adaptive development style. His somatic mind could respond to any technical challenge with appropriate solutions. He had become what most would call an expert developer. But Robert said something that shocked him. "You are skilled now. Perhaps you are even expert level. But you are not yet a master. There is a third gate that only one developer in 100 reaches. And entering it requires you to forget everything you've worked so hard to learn." The third gate, Robert said, is called RI, no mind. This is where the intuitive mind awakens. At the first gate, your analytical mind trained your somatic mind. At the second gate, your somatic mind learned to adapt and perceive. But at the third gate, something deeper awakens, the part of you that is beyond both thought and muscle memory. David didn't understand. "Sir, what exists beyond thought and action?" "Presence," Robert replied.
Pure awareness.
"The witness. The part of you that is aware of thought, aware of action, aware of everything, but is not itself a thing. At the third gate, you stop using techniques. The techniques use you. Or rather, there are no techniques anymore. There is only perfect response to the moment arising spontaneously from emptiness." For the next 3 years, Robert's instruction became paradoxical. He stopped teaching David anything new. Instead, he began removing things. "You think too much," Robert would say, stopping mid-session. "Empty your mind." "You're trying too hard," he'd say during another project. "Stop trying, just be." "You're still choosing patterns," he'd observe. "Stop choosing. Let the solution choose through you." This was incredibly frustrating. David felt like he was regressing. When he attempted to empty his mind, his analytical mind became louder. When he attempted to stop trying, he was trying to stop trying, which was still trying. One day, after a particularly frustrating development session, David sat in defeat. "Sir, I don't understand. How do I stop my mind from analyzing? Every time I attempt to empty it, thoughts appear." Robert sat beside him. "That is because you are still using the analytical mind to attempt to control the analytical mind. This is like attempting to see your own eyes. It cannot be done. The third gate is not about controlling the mind. It is about discovering that you are not the mind. You are the awareness in which mind, body, and code appear. Let me show you something." Robert pointed at his laptop screen. "Who is aware of that code?" "I am," David answered. "And who is aware of your hands typing?" "I am." "And who is aware of your thoughts and feelings?" "I am." Then Robert asked quietly, "Who is this I that is aware of everything but is not itself a thing?" For the first time, David's analytical mind went completely silent. Not because he forced it silent, but because the question pointed beyond the mind entirely. "This awareness," Robert continued, "the ancient masters call it the intuitive mind. It is not a thing you possess. It is what you fundamentally are beneath all conditioning, all learning, all identity. Understanding this intellectually is one thing. Embodying it is something else entirely." For months after that conversation, David would catch glimpses of this deeper awareness during development, during focused work, sometimes during ordinary moments, brief openings where the constant mental commentary would stop and a profound stillness would appear. In these moments, everything changed. The code became vivid, immediate, alive in a way it never had been before. Solutions seemed obvious, system architecture more clear, problems seemed to dissolve on their own. And in these moments during development, something extraordinary would happen. David would solve problems he hadn't consciously analyzed. His fingers would move with perfect precision, but there was no sense of him doing the coding. The code was just happening through him. Robert called this sway, flowing water. When water flows down a mountain, does it think about which path to take? Does it analyze? Does it try? No. It simply responds perfectly to every obstacle, every opening, every change in the terrain. This is the third gate. You become like water, effortless, perfect responsiveness. One day, 5 years into his training, David was working on 3 complex systems simultaneously. Suddenly, something broke open. Or rather, something fell away. The sense of separation disappeared. There was no David building software. There was just code flowing, perfect and spontaneous, from nowhere. His fingers flowed like water, responding to technical challenges from 3 directions simultaneously with a grace and efficiency that seemed impossible. When the session ended, David sat breathless, not from exhaustion, but from the profound strangeness of what had just occurred. He couldn't remember making a single decision. There had been no thought, no pattern selection, no trying, just pure creation arising from emptiness. Robert was watching with tears in his eyes. "You have passed through the third gate. What you just experienced, that is mushin. That is mastery." But Robert gave David a warning that would prove crucial. Do not become attached to this state. Many developers who experience mushin once spend the rest of their careers trying to recreate it. This is a trap. The third gate is not a state you achieve and then possess. It is your natural condition when all interference is removed. Some days you will experience it clearly. Other days thought and effort will return. This is natural. This is the rhythm of being human. The true master is not someone who stays in mushin constantly. The true master is someone who can move fluidly between all 3 minds as needed. Robert explained, the analytical mind is not your enemy. It is a powerful tool when used appropriately. You need it for planning, for architecture decisions, for abstract reasoning. The problem is when the analytical mind attempts to do everything, including things it is not designed for. The somatic mind is not the final goal. It is a deeper intelligence than the analytical mind, but it still operates within the realm of patterns, techniques, and learned behaviors. The intuitive mind is the source, the awareness that illuminates everything. But even this is not something you possess or achieve. It is what you are when you stop pretending to be something else. The true master, Robert concluded, moves freely between all three, thinking when thought is appropriate, feeling and executing from the somatic mind when action is needed, resting as the intuitive mind when nothing needs to be done. Years later, David would realize that the three gates are not actually three different things. They are three different perspectives on the same unified reality, like viewing a system from the front end, from the back end, and from the database. Three views of one application. 10 years after beginning his training, David had become a renowned software architect. Developers came from major tech companies to learn from him, and they always asked, "Master, what is the secret to your skill?" David would smile and say, "There is no secret. There is only the path, the three gates, and anyone can walk it if they're willing to pay the price." But David had learned something else through the years. The three gates are not just about programming. They are the universal pattern of how deep mastery develops in any domain. Do you want to master music? David would tell aspiring developers. First gate, train your hands to play with perfect form through obsessive repetition. Second gate, develop your musical ear and ability to improvise and respond. Third gate, play from emptiness where music flows through you without effort. Do you want to master business? First gate, learn the fundamental skills and best practices through imitation and repetition. Second gate, develop the ability to adapt these skills to changing markets and respond dynamically. Third gate, act from deep intuition where the right decisions arise without analytical thought. Do you want to master relationships? First gate, learn the fundamental skills of communication, presence, and empathy through conscious practice. Second gate, develop the ability to read people deeply and respond authentically to each unique situation. Third gate, love and connect from your authentic nature without technique or strategy. Do you want to master anything? The pattern is always the same. First gate, train the somatic mind through disciplined repetition. Second gate, develop adaptive intelligence and deep perception. Third gate, discover the intuitive mind that is the source of effortless mastery. But David always emphasized, most people never reach mastery because they refuse to complete the first gate. They want to skip the boring repetitive foundation and jump straight to creativity and flow. This is impossible. You cannot improvise jazz without first training your fingers to play scales 10,000 times. You cannot respond dynamically in business without first learning fundamental principles through disciplined study. You cannot access Mushin without first building strong Shu and Ha. The path is long. The path is difficult. But the path works. It has worked for thousands of years in every culture, in every domain. There are no shortcuts. There are only gates, and you must pass through each one. But David observed something troubling about his generation and the ones that came after. A disease was spreading that made true mastery nearly impossible. People today, David would say, suffer from what I call gate confusion. They mix up the gates. They try to practice first gate skills with a second gate approach. They try to force third gate experiences through first gate methods, and they remain stuck forever. I see developers who want to find their own architectural style before they've mastered the basics. This is trying to do second gate work without completing the first gate. It produces mediocrity disguised as innovation. I see developers who read books about flow states and being in the zone and try to force themselves into these states through effort and technique. This is trying to achieve the third gate through the first gate. It is using the analytical mind to try to reach no mind. It cannot work. I see developers who collect frameworks, music, endlessly, always learning something new before mastering the last thing. They have hundreds of tools but cannot use any of them skillfully. They never complete the first gate because they keep abandoning it for novelty. The modern world, David observed, rewards speed over depth, novelty over mastery, information over wisdom. This is why true masters are becoming rare. Not because people lack talent, but because they lack patience for the path. Social media has made this worse. People see the highlight reels of masters performing at the third gate and think they can skip directly there. They don't see the 10 years of boring, repetitive first gate work. They don't see the frustrating adaptation period of the second gate. They only see the final result and want it immediately. But mastery doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way. The 3 gates are not optional. They are the structure of how deep skill develops in the human nervous system. You can deny this, but you cannot change it. So here's what you need to understand. Everything I've told you about David, about programming, about Robert's training, this is not just a story. This is about you right now. Whatever you're trying to master, if you're stuck despite working hard, you're likely making one of 3 mistakes. First, you're trying to skip the first gate. You want results before building foundations. You want to be creative before being competent. You want to improvise before you can execute the basics perfectly. Solution: choose one fundamental skill in your domain. Practice it with complete attention 500 to 1,000 times. Not understanding it, not analyzing it, just pure repetition until your somatic mind absorbs it completely. In programming, write the same basic algorithm 500 times until your fingers know it without thinking. In writing, rewrite the same paragraph structure 500 times until it becomes natural. In business, practice your pitch or core skill 500 times until it flows effortlessly. In music, play the same scale pattern 1,000 times until your hands move automatically. Second, you're trying to stay in the first gate forever. You're collecting techniques, memorizing information, but never developing adaptive intelligence. You know a lot, but can't respond dynamically to novel situations. Solution: once a skill is deeply encoded, you can do it while distracted, while tired, without thinking. Start introducing variation. Change the context. Add unpredictability. Force your somatic mind to adapt. Face different challenges. Work with different constraints. Solve different problems. Respond, music, to changing conditions. This is how your somatic mind learns to improvise and flow. Third, you're trying to force the third gate. You're reading about flow states, trying to let go, attempting to trust your intuition, but you haven't built the foundation of skill that makes true effortlessly possible. Solution: stop trying to reach no mind. Instead, complete the first and second gates so thoroughly that the third gate opens naturally. You cannot force emptiness. You can only remove the obstacles that block it. The third gate is not something you achieve. It's what remains when you've built such deep skill that effort becomes unnecessary. Here's the exact practice protocol that David taught to every serious student. You can start it today in whatever domain you're pursuing mastery. First gate practice, months 1 to 6. Choose 2 to 3 fundamental skills in your domain. Practice each one daily with complete attention. Minimum 100 repetitions per day per skill. No variation, no creativity, just perfect repetition. Practice slowly enough to maintain perfect form. Minimize analytical thinking during practice. Track your total repetitions. Aim for 1,000 plus per skill. When you can perform the skill while distracted, you're ready for Gate 2. Second gate practice, months 7 to 24, music. Continue daily practice of fundamentals, 50 representatives each. Add variability, different contexts, changing conditions. Practice responding to unpredictable challenges. Study how masters in your field adapt and flow. Develop your perceptual sensitivity in your domain. Begin combining skills in novel ways. Seek out sparring partners or variable practice conditions. When adaptation feels natural and intuitive, you're approaching Gate 3. Third gate opening, Year 3 plus, music. Continue all previous practice but with less conscious effort. Add daily meditation or stillness practice, 10 to 20 minutes. Practice your skill without trying to practice. Let go of technique while maintaining skill. Rest as awareness during performance. Allow spontaneous action to arise without forcing. This gate opens when it opens. You cannot rush it. Critical reminders. Most people quit during the first gate because it feels boring. This is the test. Can you persist through boredom? Most people never leave the first gate because they keep adding new techniques instead, music, of deepening old ones. Most people try to force the third gate through books and concepts. This never works. The gates are sequential. You must complete each one. There are no shortcuts. David is now in his 60s. Recently, surrounded by his most devoted students, one asked, "Master, after a lifetime of development, what was the most important lesson you learned?" David was quiet for a long moment, his breathing slow and peaceful. Then he spoke. Mastery is not about becoming something you're not. It's about removing everything that blocks what you already are. The first gate teaches you form. The second gate teaches you adaptation. But the third gate reveals that you were never actually learning anything. You were just remembering what you always knew beneath all the conditioning. The analytical mind, the somatic mind, the intuitive mind, they are not separate. They are three aspects of your one true nature. And when they unite, when they move as one, that is what the ancients called Shinshin-ichi Nyo, mind, body, spirit as one. He looked at each student with eyes that seemed to see through to their soul. Don't waste years like I did trying to find shortcuts that don't exist. The three gates are a path, not a path. T-path. Walk through each one completely. Don't rush. Don't skip. Don't quit when it gets boring or frustrating. And here's what no one tells you. The path itself is the destination. You think you're walking toward mastery, but mastery is not waiting for you at the end. Mastery is happening in every repetition, every adaptation, every moment of awareness. You are already a master. You just haven't realized it yet. The gates are not obstacles. They are revelations. Each one shows you a deeper truth about who you really are. And when you've walked through all three, you will discover that the person who started the journey and the person who completed it are not the same. And yet they were never different. Your call to action. So here's my question for you. What stage are you in right now with your most important goal? Are you in Shu, building foundations through disciplined repetition? Are you in Ha, experimenting and developing your unique approach? Are you in Ri, flowing effortlessly from mastery? Or are you doing what David did for 18 months, collecting knowledge, trying to skip stages, wondering why you're not making progress? If you're stuck, I can almost guarantee you're trying to operate at Ha or Ri when you haven't completed Shu. The solution is painful but simple. Choose ONE proven method in your field. Copy it exactly for 6 to 12 months. Yes, it will feel boring. Do it anyway. Only after mastery, begin experimenting. Let Ri emerge naturally. You cannot force it. This is the ancient secret. This is Shuhari. This is how discipline transforms into destiny. Final words. If this story awakens something deep within you, subscribe to Discipline and Destiny now and activate the notification bell so you never miss a teaching. And tell me in the comments, which of the three gates are you currently walking through in your chosen path? Shu, Ha, Ri. Or are you still deciding whether to begin? If you made it all the way to the end of this video, you're already in the top 1% of people. Most quit within 3 minutes. The fact that you stayed proves you have the patience required for true mastery. That alone separates you from the masses who want results without work. Now, stop consuming content. Close this video and start your first gate practice today. Choose one fundamental skill. Commit to 100 perfect repetitions every day for the next 6 months. Years from now, you will look back at this moment as the turning point. The day you stopped being a seeker and became a practitioner. Until next time, walk the path with honor and dedication. The three gates await. This is Discipline and Destiny. Remember, discipline today, destiny tomorrow.